Welcome to MamaTokTok, a different take. I'm your host, AB Mambo, and I'm pleased you're joining us for the third and final installment of Child Sexual Abuse Looks Something Like This with Mani Anabo, author and survivor. Like the two episodes before it, please be advised this episode contains content that some may find troubling or sensitive. So please proceed accordingly.
And I passed out. So I don't remember what happened. I don't remember how my parents found out. I was in hospital. I woke up, my mom was there with me. I had lost my hearing in this ear, in my left ear. And I had some bruises. My face hurt, but most of all, my bum hurt a lot. I was in hospital. I remember missing school for a long time. I don't remember how long it was, but I didn't go to school for a very long time. I stayed in hospital not for that long. It was probably 3 or 4 days, but obviously I don't remember exactly. I was admitted in hospital, stayed there with my mom. Again, no communication. I don't know how I got to the hospital. I still don't know till this day, by the way. I don't know how I got there. I don't know what they thought I was there for. I don't know if they knew what George had done to me. No one asked me anything. No one said anything to me.
But okay, so a child would you fell on your bum running at school and it tore up your anus. I mean, like what?
So this one, they didn't ask me anything. Nobody asked me. The doctor comes into the room even and speaks to my mom. And even when I was discharged, I mean, I was on drips in the hospital, but I don't know if they knew what they were giving me drips for. I don't know. Nobody asked me anything.
But of course they would have known because they took you to the. So why did they take you to the hospital?
I have no idea. And I'll get to that later because, like I said, I still don't know what happened until now. I still don't know because obviously there's been no communication between my mom and I about this particular thing. I was in hospital, left the hospital, came home, was off school for a very long time on antibiotics, and at some point they even used to come to a nurse used to come to the house to give me drips. My hearing, I lost. He was. So he didn't beat me up or my brothers for a long time after that. Didn't molest me. But then after I recovered and I started going to school, he started again. He never vaginally raped me again. He went back to using my thighs. But after that particular incident, I remember writing and I remember feeling this like, have you not finally learned your lesson? Just keep quiet when it comes to this guy. Just keep quiet, because every single time I spoke, he heightened the abuse. Every time I said something, it got worse. Now I went and told Tata Marie, and look at what happened to me. So I finally learned, just keep quiet. And so I kept quiet. I literally used to say maybe 5 sentences in a whole day. And no one even really noticed. I mean, I did hear some adults at home say, this one, she's just become so quiet. I was such an introvert. I wouldn't speak. I was almost mute in school and at home. And they just used to whisper. And I heard some people whisper, no, she's just growing up. It's part of growing up. They thought I was just growing up. They didn't know what I was really going through. I just carried on documenting, and no one asked me. So my mom and my grand aunt, they carried on nursing me when I was discharged from hospital. So this thing where they put a pot of boiling water and they put cassava leaves and plantain leaves and all sorts of leaves inside, and they put you to sit next to the pot and they cover you with a blanket while they're stirring it. So they did that for me every night. I didn't look forward. I didn't like it. It was very hot and claustrophobic, but my grand aunt explained to me that it will help me to get stronger since I had left the hospital. So I usually endured it every night for, I don't know how long it was, but it just seemed like it was a long time. But even through this, my grand aunt, not once did she ask me what happened. It was just, are you feeling better? How are your bones? Are they better? Are you stronger? But I didn't know if they knew what happened. They didn't ask me. And of course, I'm not going to go asking, do you know what this, I don't know what judge told them. I don't know what happened. I don't know if they even examined my bomb. I don't know what happened. And he was still at home being praised every day and working. So evidently, whatever it is they thought made me sick, he lied about it, or the doctors didn't examine me. I don't know. So yeah, obviously I got really quiet at that point, not talking, and but the sexual abuse continued, but not as, so there was no vaginal rape. It was just using my thighs, and he did everything he could to get me on his own. He would say for him, he became bolder. When he touches a surface, I know he wants to touch, so I have to get up and go with him. So I spent my days trying to avoid looking at him, because if I looked at him, he would touch. So he devised that other way of speaking out, and he would say, I spelled towel, but I didn't look at him when I'm spelling it. He says, oh, what did you just spell? And I say I spelled towel. He say, okay, spell touching, and I'm spelling touching, but I'm still not looking at him. And he's like, what did you just spell? I said touching. And then he's like, mani. So I can look at him. And I always try to act like I don't know what he's talking about.
Knew something. I don't know.
There's I don't know.
It's just okay. So at what point this must have come to a head?
It did. It did. It's just so long, because look, all this happened over a period of nearly 4 years, and this is me actually trying to compress it. It came to an end when my brother, who was in boarding school at the time, he was in Form 3. He was in Form 3 at the time. So I was about to go to boarding school, and he was going to be in Form 3. So he came for holidays, and I was very close to him. And by the way, whenever he was at home for holidays, it made it very challenging for George to get me on his own, because we were always walking around the house together. I was always following him, my brother, or he was following me. We're always together. So it was really, really hard. And in times like that, George would literally keep his eyes on my brother every minute of the day, such that as soon as my brother goes in to have a shower, he comes and grabs me to rape me. And then he finishes before my brother comes out. So there was this one time that my brother came on holidays, and after that holiday, it was going to be the time for me to go to secondary school, Form 1. And one day when my brother was there, George called for us, my brother and my two brothers and me. He said our names. He always said our names really quickly. Come and get your food, and we would drop everything we have to go and get our food. We ran, got our food, came and sat at the dining table. And then later on, a few minutes later, my brother went to get his food, and he came and joined us at the table. He sat there just staring at us. And then he said, there's something really odd. Whenever George calls for you guys run so fast to go and meet him. It's almost as if you're scared of him. That's what he said. Those were his words. We carried on eating. Nobody said anything. I didn't respond. My younger brothers didn't respond. And then my brother asked, did you hear what I just said? I nodded. He said, you guys really act like you're scared of this guy. He's just a houseboy, I don't see what the issue is. Why do you guys act like you're scared of him? It's the way he said it with, he just hated the whole scenario. He probably noticed it a lot, and he just hated it. That moment made me feel like I could tell my brother everything that had been going on. My brother was very rebellious. He was because up until that point, nobody had even noticed or shown that they cared. This was the first time that somebody
who has been away for most of the year in boarding school,
exactly.
The one who came and said something.
Yes. So I thought about it all day. And I kept thinking, if I tell him he's so rebellious, my parents were even scared of him. They walk on eggshells around him, and he doesn't care about confronting them. I was just like, he's going to cause so much trouble, and then George will not be sent away. Then I am going to college, and I'm going to leave my brothers here with him. Why? There's no reason why I should tell him. Back and forth in my head, it was so difficult, but I decided to tell him. So I told him. I just, we were playing in his room that night, and out of nowhere, I just told him that, the reason why we run so quickly to George when he calls us is because if we don't go to him, he'll beat us. And my brother was like, what? I could see the anger just welling up in him. He said, wait, what? I carried on explaining. He said, wait, so all those x-rays that, our mom had mentioned. I said, yes, it's him. He's been beating us for years. He's been beating us. At this point, I was 11, 10. I was already 10. I was going to go to college. And so my brother just walked out and went to tell my mom. No, my mom had not come back from work yet, so she was going to come back soon. So he told other people in the house, and then my mom walked in, and once again, she fell down on the floor, screaming, crying, that she did not know that ever since that last time that I had told them that George had beaten us, that he continued. Now everyone starts shouting at me and blaming me. Why did you not tell anybody? Why did you not say anything? All this while, and I just came out with, I'm scared. I was scared of him. And they started blaming me. It serves you right. He should have even beaten you and killed you. You not say anything, and your brothers are being beaten like this. This head injury, this injury, that injury. He had even flung one of my brothers over the fence into a neighbor's house one day in a rice bag. All these things now were adding up, and that everyone realized that he has actually carried on doing all this to us. My mom screamed and cried so much. George was not at the house at the time. He had gone to the store. So someone went and called for him. He came in. My dad ended up coming. It was a whole thing. Before my dad even summoned the meeting in the living room, they had George was unrecognizable. They had beaten him and cut up his skin and everything, beaten him mercilessly. They called the police.
But at that point, did they know about the rape yet?
No, nobody knew. Nobody knew.
So you haven't told your brother yet?
No, I did not tell my brother. There's a completely different layer to that as well, because let me stop that there. So they were in the living room beating George up, but I decided not to tell my brother about the rape, because I had found out along the line that it was not something that children should be doing. Now, how I found out was one day randomly, my mom was watching a movie at home, and there was a kissing scene, and it was just me and her. And that's the first time I'd seen an actual kissing scene, because whenever it's just about to start, my dad sends us away. So I'd never seen it happen. So it was happening, and I was there with her, and she didn't tell me to leave the living room. So I saw it happening, and I realized, wait, that's what George does with me. And I turned over to look at my mom, and I was like, she was watching it so casually, not cringing or anything. And I thought, my heart was beating that, is this normal? Is this fine? But because she was sitting and watching it, I thought, oh, so it's a normal thing. But then my dad was at home that day, and he called for her. So she left the living room, left me watching that movie, and she went to my dad. So I'm sitting there watching. And the next scene in that movie, that person who was kissing someone else that night, the kissing scene changed into a sex scene, full sex. So I'm sitting there, my heart is pounding like, oh my God, this is actually something that happens, because I know of it. This is what George does to me. And the next scene shows this same girl talking to her another female friend over lunch, saying, we made love. And I remembered seeing in my mom's magazines in her bathroom about making love. And I thought, oh, so I went there now and looked and searched to see what it was about. And I read making love. It's also the same thing as sex. And I read extensively. There were so many magazines from years and years and years. I found them. I knew I had seen it before written, but didn't really pay attention. So now I knew that that's what it is, and it can make you pregnant, and that's what you do with your partner. So I knew that I must be pregnant. I learned about pregnancy. I knew all the trimesters. And I knew that I'm probably still early in my own trimester. And I believed that I had lots of babies in my tummy. Every day I would always stand there at my mom's mirror and check my tummy. It's not growing bigger. But I thought, okay, first trimester. Every time I worry about something, I go back to her magazines to read more. And that's how I learned. And so I thought I was pregnant. So at that point, when I decided to tell my brother about the beatings, I thought I was pregnant, and I knew that my parents would be furious. What the hell is going on? How did this happen? So that was something I had to keep to myself. So I didn't tell my brother about that because I believed that I had done something wrong. So I didn't mention that. So that's the response to that part of your question.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't say anything. So anyway, coming back to the night of the chaos when I said I revealed everything, just the beatings to my family, and they called police officers. And before the police officers came, they were still beating George in the living room. All the uncles and grown-ups in the house had asked my brother and I to go around the house and bring every object he had ever used on us, bring it and put it here. And we kept going and bringing things. And they were using the things to whip him, beat him, cutlass, branches, cables, shoes, mortar, pestle, grinding stones that he used to use to hit your knuckles on the floor. We brought everything. My mom took me to the side. I went to her room with her, and she asked me to sit down next to her. I sat next to her, and she asked me, she said, after a long pause, remember, we don't really talk. So she asked me after a very long pause, she wants to ask me something. I sat there and there was another long pause. And she finally said, did he rape you? And, oh no, before saying that, she asked me, so after that last time that you reported that this boy has been beating you, he continued beating you. I said, yes, mommy. Why did you not tell anybody? I said, because in front of all of you, daddy gave him permission to beat us. So, and the last time I reported, he beat us even more. So I was scared to tell anybody because he's still here and I knew he would still remain here. And she shook her head and said, you should have told me. But then she said, I want to ask you something else. And then after a long pause, she asked me, did he rape you? Okay, I don't know what rape means. So I didn't know what it meant. And so when she said, did he rape you? I said, did he what? She just shouted, did he rape you? And she held me on my shoulders and just started shaking me. Did he rape you? Did he rape you? And she's shaking me. Did he rape you? Man, you tell me, did he rape you? And she was like, oh, I'm dead or I'm finished. Did he rape you? And I was like, I don't know what it is. And, I fell on the floor with her. She was crying and I'm crying. So I didn't know what she was talking about, but she's crying and I'm in so much pain and I'm feeling so guilty that look at what I've caused my mom. All this pain, she's crying because of me. I don't even know what she's talking about. So I was just crying with her and she cried there and then my dad came. So this was before my dad arrived at the house. And then my dad came and then they took George and beat him up. So I never responded to her question. But being the person I am, being the deep thinker I was back then, we had a dictionary at home. I went and looked it up and I saw what it meant the next day. And I was like, oh, wow, that's what she was asking me. So then I said, anyway, there's no way I'm going to tell her because what are they going to, they're going to be angry with me. So I left it. I didn't say anything. But based on my calculation, my erroneous calculation, I thought that just before I go to college, I would have reached my third trimester. So I should have given birth by that time, or I should have been showing. And I wasn't showing. So I just guessed, oh, so that means I actually wasn't even pregnant. I'm glad I didn't tell anybody. And I left it at that. So I went to college. Nobody knew that I had been raped. Nobody knew at all, ever. It's a very long story. It's very hard to cut short, but I spoke to, when I was in college, I did tell my friends that, oh, I was raped, but that's it. Nothing, no more details. Nobody, so all my friends knew, but I didn't tell them any details. But the first person I actually said that to, and gave them a little more details, I don't think I should mention his name, but it's a reverend father who I really, really liked. And I confided in him, but it wasn't even me confiding. I went to confess my sins in confession, and I confessed that sin, and I told him. And I was so I was shaking and trembling and crying. My confession actually lasted almost an hour, because he took me out and went to talk to me, and he knew my brother because he used to serve mass in both schools. And he encouraged me. He didn't know our family; he just knew me and my brother, and he encouraged me to tell my brother all this and said, you need support from your friends and your family. And I said, okay, yes, I will. It was the first time I'd actually said this to anybody, and then it was him. And the benefit from me telling him this was that he said to me, it was not your fault. And he just kept saying it over and over. It was not your fault. It was not your fault.
Which
He
was the
kept
first time
repeating
that
it.
you heard it?
First time. And it just stuck with me. And over the past years, every time I think of that Reverend Father telling me repeatedly, it was not your fault, it was not your fault, and smiling at me, he actually had tears in his eyes. It always makes me emotional, because that's very powerful words. And that was the first time I ever heard those words. And they're very important words to tell someone who has gone through abuse, regardless of what or how it came about.
Yeah.
So so that is how George got taken away. When just before I left for college, the police officers came to the house. They took him away, but he got released after that. Actually, a little while after that, I actually saw him myself, because when he was being taken away, he was throwing out threats and saying, "I will come back for you. I'll deal with you. I'll show you." And he actually did. I had just randomly, I'd gone to college and come back on holidays once. And I went to the store to run an errand, and he was there. He cornered me there. He was there, but I managed to escape because there were people around. And but I lived in fear for a very long time, and that's one of the biggest. I mean, there's so many effects. There's so many side after effects of sexual abuse, especially of child sexual abuse, because your first experience of sex is that it's a secret. You're not meant to tell anyone. It's painful. It causes physical pain, and the sexual experience is just all negative. So growing up, that was my experience.
Yeah, and it comes with so many negative feelings that you don't want associated with it. Guilt being one of them.
Shame
Fear being another one. The shame is just, and then it kind of a dirtiness, right?
Yeah, yes, I went through all that. I did. I went through all that, and I don't know. I'm very grateful that I went through all these things, because I'm now able to speak about them. And like I said to you before, I'm very open. I speak about these things with anyone at any point. I usually just feel for people who are unable to receive it. Sometimes some of the things are uncomfortable, so I have to stop talking.
They're hard, but I think it says a lot about you that you are sensitive to how people are receiving it.
I know.
Because others might just be like, well, I'm the one who went through it. Why are you feeling bad?
Right. True.
But having that sensitivity to understand that for some people, this is graphic, because emotionally, even if you've never encountered sexual assault, right? The thing that you've said a lot of things, but the one that sticks in my mind the most, the image of like the penis in the mouth.
Yeah.
A child, right?
Yes.
The anal stuff is really bad, but I think it's the imagery of that, like the forceful. It's just
horrific.
Yes.
And do you know what that actually did? I've had so many after effects, and I think that I've gone to therapy, so that has helped. It also helped me to understand so many things, so many ways in which it affected me. But just having the penis in my mouth, how do you ever then kiss a guy in your life as an adult? It's difficult. I was in like 3 relationships, one of which is my husband now. But it was difficult for those exes or ex-boyfriends, because I just did not like intimacy in any form. Holding hands was a lot for me. Holding hands was a lot for me. Kissing was revolting. I would try to endure it just because, this is my boyfriend, I don't want him to feel weird. But they felt it. They just thought I was a weirdo. And that's what specifically that the penis in the mouth did to me. It made me feel that way. I was always nauseous. There's so many other after effects. Like, I don't even know where to start. But all in all, it's the intimacy part of it. It was horrible.
Funny. At the beginning of the show, you said you're still going through, it's still a journey.
Mm-hmm.
It probably will be a journey for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you find your happy place, if that's what I can call it? Because you seem quite well adjusted. When we were in Lord and you were in the same school for 4 years, when I saw you, you usually had like a bubbly personality, smiling, chatty, normal. So, before I approached you to come on the show to talk about all of this, for some reason, I assumed she and I had not talked about the story at all. So I had no idea I was going to be in for all of this today. So it's a lot. I'm taking it in real time. But I was thinking that this happened maybe when we were already in Lords. And so I had no idea that you brought this with you. And I think about that time in our lives when we began Lords, we were like 10, 11, 12 years old, right? All doe-eyed, and the world is still kind of like new.
Exactly.
But for you, it was an old, ugly, heavy, bad world.
Yes, it was. By the time I went to college, obviously at 11, which is when it all ended. I loved being in school. I loved being, obviously, it was a boarding school, and I loved. Exactly. I loved not being in my parents' house. I loved the fact that, I was with friends, and everything we did was fun. To me, it was, because prior to that, my life was all gray and gloomy, and just me being raped and hurt. It was all so horrible. So being in school was amazing. I loved spending time with my friends. It was all like, it's like going to Disneyland. I loved being in school. So I think that's what everyone could see and could feel. I just loved it.
That makes sense now.
Yes, what I struggled with. So it was like Christmas. I just did not like end of term, when I knew I had to go back home. Yes, he wasn't there, but the house was still there. Yes. And speaking of which, as soon as he got taken away that night by the police, he was gone, and everyone just went back to their normal daily life. Not one person came to me to say, "How are you? Is there anything?" Nothing, not one person. And no one has ever asked me, "How are you feeling? So what else happened? Wow, this Jojo, he really did this." So nothing. Yes, until recently, when I started talking about it and saying and pointing out, "You guys never asked me this. You guys," and I'm 39 now. So it's with me now asking them that no one said anything to me. No one asked me anything. So this guy was gone from our house. Did you not think he's still in here in my head? You live with that trauma for life. And not one person asked me how I was. It seemed to them, it just seemed as if he had never existed. No one spoke about him at home. If they did speak about him, I didn't hear any of those conversations. So to me, it was as if this guy has been taken away and everyone is back to normal. But I wasn't. I lived in those same rooms. There's no room in my parents' house that I was not raped in. Every single room, every living room, every toilet except one, every bathroom except one, every single room. So going home from boarding school, every end of term, it was so traumatic, because all I had was painful memories, every single one of those rooms. As a matter of fact, the night before I traveled to Bamenda to go to boarding school, the night before I went to start boarding school, for some reason, I just walked around the house slowly, going from room to room and bathroom to bathroom. And it felt like I was walking from one dungeon to the next, because of all the memories that came rushing to me. And for some reason, when I got to the brown toilet, I fell down. It's almost as if something hit me and I fell over. It was too much. And I fell over and just burst out crying. And that was when I realized on that night the seriousness, the enormosity of what I had actually endured for nearly 4 years.
Yeah.
Yes. So when I was in school, you were right. I was very happy to be there. So that is probably what came through for everyone to see. I was very happy to be there. At night times, though, it was horrific.
You're sleeping.
Yes, because I couldn't sleep, and then I kept having recurring nightmares of me being abused. I kept having recurring nightmares of him coming to look for me in the dormitory in school and hurting me. I always woke up in the middle of the night sweating and scared and screaming. At times, my friends said I was screaming. They don't know what I was screaming about. So I didn't like night times. I didn't like lights out. I didn't like that. But during the daytime, yes, I loved it.
And I've kept you way longer than I was.
I know, I didn't expect this either.
You know, a number of things. The first one is just, I have never heard anyone chronicle their experience of rape with this much detail. And it's not just detail about the act of rape itself. And this is the part that's really I'm having a really hard time with. But it's the manipulation and the process and the arrangement and the thought that actually went into, you started talking about grooming in the beginning. And I was like, what is she saying, grooming? And to hear how this happens, it's really it's so disturbing at its core that I cannot wrap my head around it. But I'm so grateful that you talked about it, because honestly, a lot of times, and yes, I kept asking the question, where was everybody? Where were your parents? But I'm also cognizant of the fact that there are many parents in many parts of the world today who had to work 2 or 3 or 4 jobs and entrust their child to somebody.
Yeah.
And that child gets taken advantage of. And
yeah,
that is
very
okay.
easily.
And so just, I'm so appreciative, first of all, that you share your story with us, Manny, but especially because now that phrase you said about look what you made me do.
Yes.
That's a classic, right? Look what you made me do. And then when the child or any person starts to self-isolate, we need to start asking questions, right? Like, we cannot just presume that they're growing up.
Definitely.
That's self-isolation. And the other thing that really struck me is the lack or the absence of conversation.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest problem.
Yes. And how is it? And I could have created an issue, right? The reason why this one is for things like this. There are so many people who need a place like this, and people like you who are coming on to have conversations with them that you'll never be able to have at home, because no one at home is interested,
right,
or cares, or knows what to ask.
Exactly.
And so just thank you for that, because at minimum, and I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. Once this is on air, I guarantee I'm going to hear from a lot of people who are saying, either it's thank you for telling my story, or it's going to be thank you for telling me what to look for. Because I think at the end of the day, those signs, you see a teenager, you go, okay, they're moody because teenagers are moody. No, maybe there's an uncle somewhere who's busy doing rubbish.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's always good to check in and keep those lines of communication open with children. There's always something going on, and if a child doesn't feel like they have someone to talk to, then they will find someone to talk to.
Yeah. And the other thing that I was just reflecting on is the larger community. And we talk a lot about it takes a village to raise a child. In this story, I'm like, where was the village? Because we know we can't be everywhere all the time as parents. That's why we have a village. And so when the village fails the child, what's left?
Exactly, nothing. So that's a huge lesson, and I'm glad you raised that point, because I give talks, and I try as much as possible to stress that fact to adults, or parents or guardians, to anyone who is in a position of guardianship of children.
Yeah.
It's you have to be vigilant. You have to communicate with children. You have to be open, and if you feel like something does not feel right, speak out about it. Some people wait on they're just like, no, that's her uncle, so he can't do that. If you feel that it's not right, just address it. Don't wait until you've actually seen sexual abuse happening to say something. Yes.
And the other thing that I really appreciate about this is the fact that you were able to unpack rape, but also what's happening to the support system. So is the brain behind pedophilia, because the way he treated your brothers, the way he separated you from your father, the way he played into, or rather, he had your mom play into his whole story. He used that introversion against her in a way, right?
He did, so, for sure.
Yeah, and I used to volunteer for a domestic violence center. Okay. And I would be so frustrated because we would go into court, we would get a restraining order, and within a month, usually, the women had gone back to the men. And I'd be so angry and so frustrated. But if you don't understand the root of what you just explained, Manny, then they isolate you from everyone. They make everyone a liar.
They're isolators.
Yes. Yes. They make you accountable and responsible for their actions. Oh, I slapped you. Look what you made me do. So you have given me so much wealth of information. Although I'm sitting now super paranoid, right? I'm like, okay.
It's understandable. It's understandable. Yeah. It's just I try to just draw from my experience to and then listen to other people's experiences or what they're going through right now, and they're not sure. It seems a bit odd, and I just try to help based on my own experience. And I mentioned that I went to therapy. I went to therapy when I was 31, and it was very random. I went reluctantly. I did not know that it would open up a can of worms and then help me to address my childhood abuse, and it did. So I'm very grateful for that opportunity to go to therapy, because in therapy it also helped me to understand so many things, so many aspects about myself and my behavior, which I never would have attributed to my childhood abuse ever. So that also helped me. You asked earlier where I draw my, happiness, strength from.
Yep.
Yes, it's just from knowledge, from information that I've acquired and learned, and I'm able to say, oh, this is what happened, and this is why I'm like this. When I gave birth to my daughter, for instance, I was 26 when I had her, and I nursed her for over 1 year. And as soon as she started walking, she was still nursing, but as soon as she started walking, I felt uncomfortable hugging her. And I did not know where that came from. I just felt uncomfortable. I felt like I was hurting her. And I learned from therapy that it's because of my childhood abuse. I feel like I don't want to hurt the child like I was hurt. So even being intimate with my child by cuddling her felt wrong to me. And so I didn't feel comfortable hugging her. There's so many of such things, like, you lose your self-esteem, but because I never had any to begin with, because this happened to me as a child. So you grow up with no self-esteem, right? So yeah, there's so many things I learned through from going to therapy, and I wrote my book and documented or chronicled my therapy sessions for that reason, because I know
So
that there are
this is
many
part of
people
the book
who.
as well.
Sorry.
The therapy session is part of the book as well.
Yes, it's I actually start the book when I'm on my way to therapy. So I chronicled every single therapy session in the book. It's all there because I I gained a wealth of knowledge from my therapist. He helped me
Yeah.
connect the dots about the way I was, which I did not understand. There were certain aspects about me which I didn't get, like why did I feel this way? Why did I act this way? And so my therapist helped me to connect the dots to my with my childhood abuse. And then I was like, oh, you understand it better, and then you can try to resolve it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there was a lot of that, which that's why I encourage people who can to go to therapy if you've been abused, even if you think you're fine. I was
Yeah.
so messed up in the head that I actually thought I was fine and untouched and unbothered by my abuse. That's how messed up I was. So
Wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But
So
it's all good now.
it, it, I'm glad it's all good. And I'm remembering that you said it is a journey because we're always looking for the end point, right? We
Yes.
always want to get there, but it is a journey. So, Manny,
Yes, it is.
if you just quick question before we close,
Of course.
where is he now? Do you
I don't
know?
know where he is. I don't know where he is. I have no idea. I've had, some of my friends ask me, where is he? I don't know where he is. I took it upon myself to look for him on social media because, everyone is on social media these days. I found two people with his name, but to me, they don't look like him unless he's really changed drastically physically.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look like the person I remember from when I was a child. So I don't know where he is actually.
Do you do you ever want the opportunity to confront him?
Um, I've never thought about that. Yes, I've never thought about that. But now let me see. I would like that actually. Thinking about it now, I would like that opportunity to stand face to face with him and just try to figure out what the hell was that. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was because only he and I and God know exactly what I went through, what he did, and what happened to me.
Yeah.
Because now the world knows, but it's only in my writing. You no one saw it happen. So, but he knows, and I don't get it. Like, so people can be as barbaric as that for no reason whatsoever. You know.
Yeah. I really want to know his reason, which is probably
Mm-hmm.
just he was a sick individual. What about your parents?
Mm-hmm.
Um, do, are you were you angry with them?
I was. Oh my goodness. I guess I resented not so much my dad. I resented my mom. I didn't have any resentment towards my dad because I don't know. He had said, he had expressed his sadness in the when it happened, and I'm so sorry, and he cries and he hugs me and shows me he feels bad. So, but with my mom, I did have a lot of resentment towards her. Now we're on good terms, and I understand. um I believe that I have some understanding of what she might have been going through at the time, but this is
Yeah.
just because I've tried to give myself some explanation as to what position she might have been in at the time, because I've not got that explanation from her directly. She's not very communicative. She's not very she doesn't talk about it. She's never spoken about it. So I've not been able to really pick her brains on, so what was this about and what was that about. But So I did have a lot of resentment towards her over the years, which was really hard to deal with. But I managed to get over it, even despite not getting an explanation for her. She said she's sorry. She has said she's sorry for what happened to me.
Yeah.
And that is initially it wasn't enough for me. I wanted an explanation. I wanted more. But when I realized at some point that I'm not going to get any more, I had to come. Exactly. I just had to make my peace with that. And I know she's very sorry. I don't think I'll get any more of an explanation of anything else. So I've made my peace with that, and I'm okay. And I actually in many ways feel bad for her, because I feel like it wasn't normal for her reaction at certain points when was not a normal reaction. So I feel sorry for her, because I feel like there must have been something that happened to her in her own life, which must have prevented her from reacting in the way that you would expect a mom to react when that happened. Yes. So yeah,
there's a cyclical nature to these things. Something happens to you that prevents you from acting the way you should in this case, and something happens to that person because you didn't act, and then that becomes your story, and the cycle just kind of continues. Well, Manny, title of the book again?
The title of the book is Cactus in a Calabash, and it's only available on Amazon everywhere. Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Cactus in a Calabash.
Cactus in a Calabash, replaying your story in my head, makes me wonder. We know it's widespread, but it makes me wonder how many little boys and girls are going through this, because this is not random.
It's not. Yeah.
And it's not rare.
It's not. Yeah. And it's preventable.
It is 100% preventable.
It's
that's the scary part. And I thanked you for your story, but I didn't thank you for the courage in doing the work that you do today. Because it's almost like reliving this experience every day and seeing the same mistake to some extent that happened with you.
I do. But I am the way I see it is as an opportunity. I just feel very opportune to be there at that point in time with whoever I'm working with, to be able to point something out. And it's cliche, but they say knowledge is power. But passing on that knowledge and that information to whichever client or whoever I'm working with, it's often life-changing. It just changes everything. It changes the whole situation around. Yes, and safeguards the children. So but thank you.
The families you work with are lucky to have you, to have somebody who can spot this thing from start to finish. And just again, thank you for coming to the show. Thank you for sharing yourself.
Yes, I'm glad that you reached out. I'm happy we had this conversation. I believe that it's one of my purposes in my life to share my story in order to inform other people and to change their lives. So I'm really just doing what I believe is my responsibility, my duty, my obligation. I'm happy to be able to share this.
I just wish people didn't have to go through things like that to walk in their purpose.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I had said to you at the beginning that there's a poem that I wrote. So in closing, I do want to share that with you and with the audience.
Thank you for having me.
So much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And we will save as many little kids as we can with this one little podcast. We'll do everything that we can.
I hope so. I pray. Thank you so much. You're doing great.
Dedicated to every child whose innocence was stolen. This piece is called Naked. I never knew I was naked until that Harmattan morning in late February when I was 6 and bathing in the courtyard, while you leaned out of the second-story window, fresh chewing stick between your teeth, drool hanging midair like a silvery cobweb in the sun. That night you groped me when Papa and Mama went dancing, stuck your cigarette-tinged tongue in my mouth, forced my hand down unzipped trousers, stifled screams of "Uncle!" growing bitter between clenched, chattering teeth. And 2 decades later, I can't buy enough clothes or wear enough layers to cover my body or obscure the memory of the day I found out I was naked.